Hello, hello. Thank you for coming back for our afternoon keynote.
This is very exciting stuff. It's lovely to all have you in the one room again. Thank you to our brilliant partners in Daily, Refuel, Creative, Stack, Woolman's Lawyers and AADC. Also, all the photos and videos that you've been taking of today, very grateful. Make sure you use the hashtag DigitalADL. Just a side note.
And we realised this morning we forgot to do something that Jen always tells us to take a selfie from the stage. I know you guys all want to be in our group selfie. So Nerd over here brought a selfie stick because she's the only person I know that actually owns a selfie stick.
I had to dig it out from the bottom of the wardrobe, I won't lie.
We need everyone to look a little bit hyped, and then we'll put this on the Digital Adelaide socials.
Does everyone consent to being in this photo?
If you don't, get under the table. That's the rule. You're either in it or under the table.
Hands in the air would be nice, because if we just sat there to... someone said, come on. Let's look like we're having a party in here, which we are, so... It might take a couple of goes and it's got 3 seconds on it. So wish us all the luck. All right. And it helps if we go 3, 2, 1, yay!
And one more.
Hang on.
We got this. Chanel doesn't take many photos. She's got messages coming in on Facebook as she's trying to take the photo. Right, last time. Right, we got this.
Hang on. Should I, any tips? Should I video it? Yes.
She's backed out of the app. All right, here we go. All right, there we go.
Are we good?
Hey!
All right, 3, 2, 1, yeah!
There you go.
Put music over that, don't worry.
All right, let's tidy this up. Let's introduce our keynote speaker for the afternoon. Someone who lives and breathes bold content, unlike what you just attempted to take. Robin O'Connell is LinkedIn's head of content solutions for APAC and a true master of marketing that actually moves the needle.
He certainly does. With a decade of experience guiding top brands across Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, and now Asia Pacific region, Robin knows exactly what it takes to build smarter, sharper content strategies that get real results.
He's a trusted advisor to startups and small businesses, helping them to punch above their weights with standout storytelling. Now, while this presentation's going on, submit your questions using Slido and upvote questions that you like, because he has a really cool prize to give away to the most upvoted question at the end of his presentation. So get on Slido, use the QR code, ask your questions, upvote ones you like, and he will give you an amazing prize if you are the person who asked the best question.
How good is that? Let's welcome Robin O'Connell. He's all yours.
It's nice to meet everyone. The one time I forgot my selfie stick. I normally have it everywhere with me, but I forgot it this time. Could have used it. I might get it afterwards. Thank you. So just to check the energy in the room, how's everyone feeling after their afternoon break? Whew, not great. Okay. Well, it's a good thing we have a prize set up and ready to go then. So I will give away what that prize is. If you can get your questions into Slido, the one with the most likes, the most upvotes will win 6 months of LinkedIn Premium free on me. So get your questions in there. Make sure you don't submit them anonymously. Make sure your name is there so I can see who it is. And we will find the person with the most likes and make sure that they get that prize. While you're thinking of your questions, my name is Robin O'Connell. Thank you so much already for the introduction. I'm from LinkedIn. And today we're going to be talking about the art and science of brand, which I think is a pretty interesting topic, right? Because you might be on one side or the other. Like, is it more of an art? Is it more of a science, building a brand? So maybe just to check with everyone in the room, what do you think? Let's do a show of hands. So put up your hand if you think building a brand is more of an art. Couple of hands, yeah, okay. Put up your hand if you think that building a brand is more of a science. More hands have gone up. All right, so we're a group of scientists in this room today. That is really, really good to know. I'll focus more on the numbers and less on the pictures in this presentation for everyone, for my scientists in the room. I was actually on that side for a very long time. I thought that building a brand was all about the science. There are certain things you can measure. There's a data point for everything. There's a formula for building a great brand. But then I heard a story that changed my mind just a little bit. And that story went something like this. 2 advertising executives go for lunch one day. One advertising executive has been recently hired, and she is thinking about how she can measure brand and how it impacts a customer's purchase decision. And luckily, the other advertising executive pulls up in a brand new Aston Martin. Lucky for some, I know. But that advertising executive sits down, and advertising executive number one says, "Why did you buy that car? What made you make that purchase?" And he said, "Oh, it's easy. I bought this car because I saw an ad. I saw James Bond driving this Aston Martin 30 years ago." And the first executive thinks, how the hell am I supposed to measure that? And that is the reality, that the way that people make purchases is really complex and can take a really, really long period of time. So yes, there's a science to building a brand, but there's absolutely an art as well. There is an art in how we craft those messages, and there is an art in how we get people to remember them. And so the reality is, look, it's both, right? There's an art and a science to building a brand. And at LinkedIn, we have been on a journey to understand what makes the most effective advertising on our platform. What is the best creative, and why is it the best creative? And it's been a really long journey, and a huge foundational piece of it has been this research that we call the art and science of building a brand. And I want to share a couple of things that we learned along the way that got us to this point. The first thing is the traditional view of marketing, the famous funnel that appears everywhere. It's pretty simplistic, right? Brands grow by pushing buyers down this funnel. You take a buyer, you make them aware of your brand, you push them further down by making them consider your brand, and then you push them into making a purchase at the very end. But it is not necessarily accurate. And one thing I can tell you is that advertising and content doesn't convince people to buy. They buy when they're ready to buy. We assist in that journey, and a better way of thinking about this journey is adding an access for time, thinking about it over a very long period, and splitting it into two. You have people who are about to make a purchase. Those are your in-market buyers. They'll purchase in the next 3 months. And then you have people who won't purchase in the next 3 months. They're your future pipeline. That's your out-of-market audience. And Professor John Dawes at the Ehrenberg Bass Institute has done some amazing research here. And he's put some numbers around that, and he's found that in the majority of situations, about 5% of your entire market is in-market in the next quarter, and 95% is out-of-market. And the best advertisers speak to those two audiences. And if you were to ask me which is more important, generating the leads in the next 3 months, obviously that is critical, but we have to remember an often neglected side of marketing, especially on social, and that is the out-of-market audience that we often don't talk to. It's 95% of the audience. It's 95% of our opportunity. And the problem with over-focusing on in-market is that what we have found through research done by LinkedIn and the B2B Institute is that about 90% of buyers will purchase from a brand that comes to mind on day one when they think about making that purchase. 90% are choosing a brand that they think about on day one. That short list, the day one list, typically about 3 brands. That's what we're up against. If we spend all of our time in consideration and conversion, it looks good on paper, but we're missing a huge amount of opportunity, because ultimately, the brand that gets remembered is the brand that gets bought. You have to be remembered in order to get bought. It is really, really, really important. And we're all marketers, right? So we know brand is important. The question is, where do we focus? Where do we typically focus? And you can ask marketers, and they'll tell you. The percentage of marketers that are optimizing inside 2 weeks, making changes to their campaign and just within the first 2 weeks. Hands up if you've made a change to your campaign within the first 2 weeks. I certainly have done it. It's very tempting. A couple of people, maybe a few people too shy to put up their hand, because we find that 75% of marketers make changes and optimizations within just 2 weeks of content going live. How much of us are measuring the effects of content beyond 6 months? Hands up if you're measuring beyond 6 months. Couple of hands, you're all ahead of the ball here because most marketers do not. Right? About 4% of marketers measure beyond 6 months. So what's the problem with this? The problem is that what gets measured gets managed. And what gets managed gets invested in. And it's really clear that today, most marketers are investing in the short term. And we could speak all day about why that is, about the pressures that lead to that situation, but ultimately, the problem is if you keep investing in the short term in just those that are in market, you're missing out on a huge part of the opportunity because your content will probably look something like this. Right? It is static imagery, it is big, bold stats, it's maybe optimized to get clicks. But what is the problem with this? It doesn't stand out. Why would you remember this? Is this creative enough to stand out, to be remembered by your audience? I would say no. And that is a huge problem that we are facing. And, a part of the problem here has been platforms, right? Because we can only show you the clicks, right? The direct action that people take. And you can only measure that and optimize off of that. And that is an issue. A huge change for marketers on LinkedIn has been the release of what we call brand lift studies. Now, they're not unique to LinkedIn. They're across the advertising industry, but what it allows you to do is measure your long-term metrics, your mind metrics for the out-of-market audience. You measure things like unaided awareness, like preference, like consideration against your competitors before your brand content goes live and after your brand content goes live. And you can see what's actually driving those long-term effects, which is a game changer for marketers, but it's had a huge impact as well on how we think about content best practice. Because we now have a database of campaigns that have driven success with these brand lift studies, that have resulted in really positive long-term outcomes for brands. And so we've put all of those together and we've tried to understand, okay, what drives the long-term effects? What drives the brand building effects for companies and for content? That is the art and science of brand. That is the research that has changed the way we think and I think about content best practice. And that is what I would like to share with you today. Does that sound good? Yes? A couple of nods. Energy's still low after afternoon tea. That's all right. I'm going to share why this research has changed how we think and what exactly it tells us to do when it comes to creating content for platforms like LinkedIn. The summary of this research can be found right here. This is what we have found. About 85% of performance for content campaigns on LinkedIn come from just 3 things. The first is creative drivers of attention. That is capturing attention with your content. It is standing out. Right? So content is king, but distribution is queen. And she probably wears the pants in that relationship. Right? Because number 2 here is distribution in terms of media delivery. Right? You can't just take an ad and show it to no one and expect to be successful. It's how you deliver that media is really, really important. And then the third, a little bit less at 25%, is existing brand network effects, which is essentially the fact that bigger brands have bigger advantages with things like followers, organic engagement, and employee bases. Those are the 3 big things. And if you're thinking about reaching out-of-market buyers, creating memories of your brand, and growing your brand to a much larger scale over a longer period of time, this is what you should be thinking about when it comes to content. So we're going to go through each one of these now. The first one is creative drivers of attention, and I actually just want to play a little game here with everyone, right, to get this point across. So if you'll indulge me, what I want you to do is have a look around the room today and find as many things as possible that you can that are the color blue, okay? You're going to be tested on this, so I'll give you a couple of seconds. Have a look around the room. How many things can you find that are the color blue? 3, 2, 1. All right, eyes back up here, attention back up here. I want you to turn to the person on your left, and I want you to list out everything you found that was the color red. No one's talking. Why is that? Okay, a couple of people are now. Right, but that's really hard to do, right? Why is that so hard to do? It's because you cannot remember things that you haven't paid attention to. And your audience will never remember your brand unless they pay attention to your content. That is the biggest finding from this research. The most important driver of success for these campaigns and for content is attention. Attention is absolutely critical. And there's basically 3 ways that attention came up in these findings. The first is the quality of your creative and how we measure that with what's called dwell time. That is how long someone is spending on your content. And it's not something we typically measure, but what we found is actually the longer someone stays with your content and pays attention to your content, the more likely they are to remember your brand. The next one is creative format. Certain formats work better than others. What do you think is the highest performing format for attention? Yeah, video, exactly. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. And then finally, it's creative count, also known as consistency. This is how many creatives you have running at any one given time. That is how you capture attention, those 3 things. So let's go through each of these in a bit more detail. This first one here, dwell time. This is how we measure attention. Dwell time is literally the amount of seconds that someone is spending with your content. And what we found was that there were significant increases in your brand metrics if you could get someone to hang around with your content for between 9 and 11 seconds. And that is a new way of thinking about content creation for a lot of people, is not designing for an action, but designing to get someone to pay attention for 9 seconds. It's a new way to write briefs, it's a new way to create content, and it's a new way to think about what we are creating for a platform like LinkedIn. So how do we do that? What does it look like to design for dwell time and design for attention? I have a couple of examples here, and I love this example because it's a small bank in the UK who are punching way above their weight with their creative. And the way they're doing that is they're telling captivating stories around specific customer and audience pain points. So let's take a quick look.
Hey! Hope you don't mind, but my mate Ty decided to tag along.
Oi, oi. Boom! Elephant in the room.
You know, Stevie here nearly cancelled, stressing out about his spending. But then he spoke to TSB, and little old me didn't seem so scary. Kong!
How?
Talk to us via video call 7 days a week.
So pretty good. That's the B2C version. What's cool as well is that there's a B2B version also.
Drop it there, mate. Lucy!
Don't worry about her. She's just the elephant in the, shop.
Listen, 3 weeks ago she'd have been scared to order new stock.
Project spills, overhead, stock. But then I spoke to TSB about my money worries and the elephant in the room didn't seem so scary.
Get 30 months free business banking with TSB.
Incoming!
So whether you love that little elephant or you find him kind of annoying or you sit somewhere in between, the fact is, with a piece of content like this, once you start paying attention, it's hard to stop, right? It's really good at pulling you in and getting you to stick with the content because it is a story creatively told around a customer or audience pain point. And there's a lot more we could dive into here on what they're doing in terms of best practice. Using a mascot is shown to get about 6 times the amount of attention than an ad without a mascot, so that's a great thing to be doing. It's a really creative story, but also they're using this format that we mentioned, right, video. And this is really important because it came out of the research that we all know video is powerful, but especially when it comes to building brand, right, and influencing those long-term metrics, we see time and time again that video simply outperforms every other format. Specifically, if you choose a video instead of an image, you get about 11% more dwell time for your audience. If you're sponsoring that video and you choose the objective to be video view, you get about 27% more dwell time. And if you set the system to optimize towards video views, you get about 33% more dwell time. So it's about choosing video, prioritizing video where possible, and also setting up your campaigns in a way where you're optimizing to get more from your videos. Now, one of the most common questions I get asked when it comes to using video in advertising at LinkedIn is how long should my videos be? And this is one of the things that changed in terms of our best practice. So I remember when video ads first came out on LinkedIn, we got this question a lot. What length should they be? Right? What length should they be to drive the best performance? We went to our product team and we asked, hey, what length should these videos be to drive the best performance? And they said, video ads that are 30 seconds or less are driving the best performance. We said, okay, great. A few months later, back to the same product meeting, hey, any updates on video length? Yeah, actually now we're finding that video ads that are 15 seconds and less are driving the best performance. And we said, okay, that's pretty short, but that's fine. Same product meeting, few months later, any updates? Yes, we are now finding that video ads that are 5 seconds and less are driving the best performance. And we said, okay, we have to draw a line in the sand here because we're about to start recommending 0-second video ads, which are just images. So but what exactly is happening, right? So what was happening was it was in the wording. What exactly does driving the best performance mean? The product team were defining driving the best performance as user takes an action. So that actually holds true. If you want someone to take an action, if you want them to download a white paper, click to your website, whatever that action might be, shorter videos do work best. 5-second, 10-second GIF-style videos work really well for that. But this research has shown us that if you want to drive memories, if you want to be remembered by your audience, if you're targeting more of the out-of-market audience, 7 seconds to 30 seconds work best. It means you have up to 30 seconds to play with. And so my new rule of thumb here would be think 10 seconds and less for driving action, think 10 second to 30 seconds for building a memory. And so where possible, we do want to use shorter video ads, right? It's still all below 30 seconds. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. Does anyone follow New Zealand Police on LinkedIn? No? Give them a look. I see a couple of nods. Give them a look. They are one of the better brands globally on LinkedIn at creating content, New Zealand Police. And they do a really good example here. When they needed to recruit for a few different roles, they had 30 different roles available. And the typical perception in market is if New Zealand Police are hiring, they're hiring policemen, right? But what they wanted to show was that there was a huge diversity of roles available. And so they used a short video ad like this to demonstrate that. And what I love about this example is that it's not massive budget, right? This isn't just for the bigger brands. This is accessible for all brands. And it's a really creative execution of that campaign idea. So use short video ads where possible. Be creative, and you don't always have to think super high budget for this kind of stuff. The final piece about capturing attention is being consistent and having multiple versions of your creative. Again, this is really, really important. It's not just about having a one-and-done attitude where we create a great piece of content and high-five and go home, right? There's more to it than that. And building memories is about being consistent over a long period of time. Again, another kind of rule of thumb here for our best practice, what we're finding is that if you have between 5 and 7 different versions of your creative live as part of that campaign, you're far more likely to be successful. That doesn't have to be 5 to 7 completely different pieces of content. Great example here from Adelaide University. I'm sure we've all seen this content or a version of it, right? It's a really clever message here about soaring to new heights, about kind of growing and reaching and launching your future. And what's great about the Adelaide content is it's not just a one and done. It's executed multiple times. It's executed across different messages for different audiences. That is how you be consistent, and it's how you build memories in a much more efficient way. So think about that number, 5 to 7 different versions of your creative. Now, if you've gotten to this point, you're at 30% of the way there. It's a huge chunk of your campaign performance. But the other side of this coin is how you deliver the media. And that is really, really important, right? We don't create a beautiful billboard and put it in the desert, right? We have to make sure that our brand messages and our content are getting in front of the right people. So how exactly do we do that? What does that look like? It basically breaks down into a few different areas. But the key things are, number one, this is foundational, it's reach. It's making sure that you are reaching enough people. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. The second piece here is recency, right? That is how frequently someone sees your message. The fact is that memories decay and they erode over time. And so we need to be showing up consistently in front of our audience. And then the final piece is frequency. It's how often you are showing a piece of creative to an audience. And all of that comes together for media delivery. It's really important to be thinking about this. The most important piece here, they're equally weighted, but the fact of the matter is I see most brands fall down on reach. Reach is so important. No matter what research that we look at, we know that the brands that reach more category buyers more often are more successful. So we cannot neglect reach. I think one of the things to consider here is if you come to a platform like LinkedIn and you're building out your audience, often there is a lot of targeting options. And we end up entering in something that's close to our ICP, right, our ideal customer profile. But if you add too many filters and you narrow down too much, you're really constricting how effective that you can be. That is really important to remember. So if you're in B2B, don't target the senior decision maker, target the entire buying committee around that person to drive influence. And if you're in B2C, don't just target the person who's going to buy from you today. Think about who might buy from you over the next 12 months and beyond. Thinking broad when it comes to reach is critical. And the final two pieces here are expressed in a very confusing slide. It took me a long time to understand what was happening up here. So I'll talk you through it really quickly, but I'll give you a much better, I think, rule of thumb to think about recency and frequency. So what we're finding in terms of recency is you have to reach people on a regular basis. And if they go more than 10 days without seeing your content, they're far more likely to start to forget you. Right? The second thing here is that in terms of how often they should be seeing the content, how many times they should see a single piece of content, an optimal number here is about 12 to 20 impressions in 90 days. 12 to 20 impressions in 90 days. To put all of that together, right, what that means is for every individual in your target audience, they should be served at least one impression or more per week. That's your rule of thumb. You have to be reaching people every week, one impression or more. And Byron Sharp from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute nearby would say that when it comes to your marketing budget, what you should do is you should take that budget, divide it by 52, and that is your weekly budget. That is how evenly spread it should be. And that's what we see with this research as well, is that making sure that we're reaching enough people frequently, always on over a long period of time is absolutely the optimal approach. And what that looks like in terms of content is something like this from one of my favorite brands on LinkedIn. This is Walnut. Walnut target sales and marketing professionals on LinkedIn, a really crowded marketplace. But what they do incredibly well is they have this creative iteration of their message, right? This almost meme-style content that is so instantly recognizable as being from them. And what they do is they reach their category buyers as often as possible and as frequently as possible with different versions of the same message. And that is why they are so well known just within the past few years. It's a really good example of how you think about content in terms of reach, frequency, and recency. If you get to this point, you're more than halfway home, right? You're 60% of the way there. That 60% of campaign performance is creative and the way that we deliver it. But we don't want to sleep on this last piece here, this additional 25%. And that is, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that not all brands are created equally. Some have advantages, and we call those advantage brand network effects. What they look like, what we're actually talking about here, is organic engagement, right? So building organic engagement on platforms like LinkedIn, followers, right? Having a large follower base on the platform, and then employee networks, activating your employees. The next time someone asks you why we should focus on organic content or why followers matter or why we should be getting our employees to post, this is the aspect of the research that I would be showing them. It's really, really powerful. And there's probably two types of brands in this room, right? There's the larger brands and there's the challenger brands. The larger brands, this is your advantage that you need to maintain. And for the challenger brands, this is the kind of space that we want to get to, right? This is where we want to get to be more efficient in how we compete. So in terms of organic engagement, the more we can engage people organically, the better the results will be for our brand content. Bit of a magic number here in terms of if you can get to 50,000 engagements or more in 6 months, you're far more likely to be successful with your campaign content on the brand side. The other side of this is employee networks. And this, for me, is the secret sauce of the LinkedIn platform. This is what really sets certain brands apart. What we find is that if your employees are active, if your employees are posting content and making connections on the platform, it has huge effects on your content and the campaigns that you run. And that is why it is the secret sauce for the platform. There's no other network really where you can use employees like this as an additional organic channel. It can really help build your reach. The content can be really engaging. And so the question is, what does that look like for our campaigns? And I've spent many years in employer brand, in the employer brand space before I moved into this content role at LinkedIn. And I've seen a lot of really good pieces of content here. But I love what Virgin have done, and it's almost guaranteed to bring a smile to your face. So let's take a look at how Virgin used their secret sauce.
These real Virgin employees think they're about to give us a testimonial, but instead of having them sing our praises, we're singing theirs with an incredibly catchy and upbeat anthem.
What?
Lights!
Look up above and beyond in the dictionary. Smiling back at you, there'd be a bigger Marie. 25 years together keeps getting better and better. Virgin Money's greatest asset, she's a real go-getter. Marie won't leave you on hold in the cold, no info. Losing it until the phone limbo. Always goes the extra mile. When they ask us how we do what we do, we owe it to the Virgin family. It's true. The secret sauce is you.
Oh my goodness! So Marie comes in to give a testimonial about the brand ends up giving a testimonial about her, and you can see what it means to her. It is such a powerful piece of content because we connect with people more than we connect with brands. People connect with people, and we either know a Marie or we've been a Marie at some point, and so it's so easy to connect to this piece of content, and it is really, really powerful. So appreciating your employees, but just bringing them into your content is a really powerful way of up-leveling it, of getting more attention and creating more connections. And it doesn't have to be, the most creative iteration like this. It can be a simpler iteration like we see here with Byron Sharp for the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, where he is positioned as an expert and a leader in the industry, right? And he's actually used in the content to draw in attention, engagement, and connection. And that is something that's available to all of us. We will all have experts in our business, people with stories to tell and opinions to give. And we can put them in ads like this one, thought leader ads, that allow us to bring our people front and center on LinkedIn. Great way to highlight your experts, great way to create connections. And so I wanted to kind of wrap it all up. Rather than just going through the key takeaways, I want to show you a brand that I think get all of the key takeaways right in pretty much one piece of content. Has anyone seen this ad from Google Ads? Couple of hands going up. Okay, that's good. Well, let's take a look at what they do with Sharon Strzelecki.
Bold and beautiful. I'd heard of Google Ads, but I thought this will be too techie for me. I was wronger than a wronger. It's actually got just 3 basic steps. That's half the steps the Macarena has, and I nailed that. So now I tell all my fellow entrepreneurs, head to Google and Google Ads, because if I can do it, yous can too.
As someone from Ireland, it took me so long to understand what was happening in that video. I did not get it at all, but I've come to understand how good it really is. And so what they've done is they've optimized the creative like we talked about, right? It's really optimized for attention. It's a clever story. It's in the short video format. But then what they've gone on and done is they have been really clever about the different versions of that content that they've created, right? Paid brand, paid demand, images, videos. They've leveraged their employees, right? They get their employees to post about this. They actually send their employees their profile pictures on LinkedIn with a photoshopped bowl cut on them and get them to update their LinkedIn profile. They got me to do it. unfortunately. And so this is me with a bowl cut, which I actually kind of grew to love eventually. But this is really, really smart, right? They're doing exactly what we talk about. They're being really creative with their content. They're optimizing for attention with their videos. They're reaching as many people as possible, not just through their paid channels, but through organic and through their people. And then really cleverly, they're bringing in employees and they're bringing in people wherever possible to tell this story. And this, for me, is a campaign that really wraps up all of those key takeaways. And so again, I want to iterate here that it's not an art or a science, it's an art and a science. And so when we think about these key takeaways, when we think about capturing attention, right, aiming for about 10 seconds of dwell time, when we think about using short videos, aiming for reach and maximizing your brand networks, we also need to be thinking about creating a culture of experimentation and seeing what works for us. And I find that takeaways like this from big research projects, often they are better viewed as ingredients rather than recipes. Take what works for you and begin to apply it and see what works as you build out your brand content. Final thing I'll say is it's about having the right message, so the right content optimized in the right way, reaching the right people, but the final piece is it's also reaching them at the right time and in the right context. Right, and that is why LinkedIn is such a powerful channel for these brand campaigns. So final thing I'll ask you to do is if you want to connect, please take out your phone, scan the QR code, and we are going to go to questions now. Now, I know that not every question will get answered, most likely, so my commitment is if you connect with me on LinkedIn, if you have a question, I will answer you if you message me. I don't know how much work I'm signing up for, we'll see, but I am absolutely happy to get back to you and to answer whatever questions you have if we don't get it answered today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. First question, how much is it going to cost us to get you to actually get a bowl cut? Because
I don't think I have enough hair.
We could all pitch in $5. We could do it.
That sounds like
we
a
need
bad
to put you in the
man.
middle, Robin.
Yeah,
Come
yeah.
on. You're the star here today.
First real question, how do you get a business to actually invest in creativity and not just talk about it?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's really hard to jump from saying that we need to be more creative to actually getting the investment to do that. I think it starts with, it depends on the brand and who you work with, but one of the slides we covered was that idea of the funnel flipped on its side. One of the great things about that concept is you can now start to speak in the language of the business rather than in the language of the marketing team. And so what I mean is we're not doing brand awareness content and then consideration content. We're actually influencing short-term cash flow and we're influencing long-term cash flow, right? And I think using the language of business, using the language that your CFO uses or the budget holders use, that's really important, and trying to align to business metrics and business priorities. That's how you get budget over the line. And then the additional tactic that I'll mention is have a look at your competitors, aspirational and direct. Look at what they're doing, and if you can find brands that are starting to bring in more creativity, show your leadership, show your company, and show them that you could get left behind. I think those are the two things I'd focus on.
And on that note, I know Facebook and Instagram, you can get away with a lot more, run and gun content.
Yeah.
How's that on LinkedIn? Are we looking at professionally created content, or is it good enough to grab your phone as long as you've got a good idea?
Yeah, we were actually talking about this just earlier today. And what we found is, I think it's since COVID, there was a trend on LinkedIn of content getting more personal. And then with what happened during COVID, we suddenly switched to a version of business where you would talk to your colleagues and you'd have a window into their life behind their head, right? They'd be on Zoom and you would see their life play out behind them. And I think that accelerated the trend, like it did to so many other trends, in that personal and professional became a lot more mixed. And now today what we see on LinkedIn is if you're setting out to create content for your brand and you try and sound more professional like everyone else does on LinkedIn, you just slip into the sea of sameness, right? And it's impossible to stand out. Whereas if you take an alternate approach and you're more personal and you find your Maries, right? And you highlight your Maries, or you find your employees and tell their story, or you aim to stand out by bringing in the personal, authentic connections, that's when brands really start to stand out.
Creativity is in all of us. I think that's a given. But sometimes it can be hard to tap into that creativity. Some people can feel like there's a blockage, especially with a brand that might not allow as much flair and colour as others.
Yeah.
Have you got any kind of stories or tips of how people can maybe lean into that creativity more?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time looking at content on LinkedIn. So if you have an industry in mind where you're struggling in that area, message me and I will help you find some industry-specific examples. One of the best things to do is, we don't want to slip into doing what everyone else does, but we can go to places like the LinkedIn Ads Library, right, which is a tool where you can type in a company's name and see exactly what they're advertising. You can get a lot of inspiration from that. There are a few brands that are starting to do this really, really well.
You got an example?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. I think New Zealand police are amazing in what they do because they would typically be in an industry where creativity doesn't happen a lot, right? And so I love that example because of the strength of the creative, but also because it's not typical, right? For government or for police or, no matter what way you dress it up, people don't normally do that. And they've seen incredible results. They position it as they serve the community, and so they want to create content that helps serve the community. And what you'll see is puppy graduations from their dog training, which does incredibly well, day in the life of police officers. That is all really aligned to their organization objectives, right, of serving the community. And that's what we need to think about is looking at our organization objectives, how can we align what we want to do from a content perspective to what our organization is doing. There's a few other examples that come to mind, but again, if you have an industry you're struggling with, message me and I'll show you an example.
Beautiful. Great tip.
So does Facebook, Instagram, TikTok content, does that work on LinkedIn? Are we just copy pasting or are you after unique individual content specifically made for LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like some of the content that we create for other platforms can work on LinkedIn. Sometimes you'll see that it just tanks. And so at the very least, I would think that you should adapt it a little bit. People come to LinkedIn with intent usually, right? And what we mean by that is they come to LinkedIn to connect with their network, to look up updates on an industry, to apply for a job. And so that is something that if you can connect to that in your content, if you can provide value, we see a lot of success there. And so I would say that sometimes the content that we create for TikTok, Instagram, etc., isn't really value-based. It's more maybe entertainment-based. I think on LinkedIn, think about value plus entertainment. How can you provide value in an entertaining way? One of the best brands in the world at doing this right now are Canva. Their organic content on LinkedIn is really, really good. They use their employees. They do things like 4 tips to get better with AI, but it's presented in a really entertaining way. So you're getting the value, but you're getting the entertainment. So long answer, but I would say that some of the content will work, some won't. And if you're thinking about what to prioritize and how to adapt, value plus entertainment.
I think this answers the next question. We have a stack on Slido, which is fantastic because it just proves there's so much engagement to what you're saying. This might be a short answer. What is more important, quality or quantity of content? I suppose it's in your message, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say quality all day. I work with brands that you come to me and say, hey, we've 5,000 pieces of creative running, like which one's working best? And it's like, how did you get here? 5,000 pieces of content? Like I think with AI especially, we can talk about AI all day, but the fact of the matter is the cost of content creation is going down massively. And so there has never been a better time to create content, but there's also never been a better time or an easier time to create shit content, right? And there's a lot of it out there, right? And you see it across a lot of different platforms. And I wouldn't want to fall into that trap of saying quality is most important, we need to be on 10 different platforms, and then producing below average content across those platforms. I would much rather see high quality pieces of content designed to capture attention, created in a really meaningful way, and just put more budget or more emphasis behind that or create different iterations of it. Too, isn't it, really? Yeah, exactly, yeah. And so for me, always quality over quantity.
So cat memes are out.
Cat memes are in.
Oh,
cat memes are quality.
Question from Rob. Do you think we can scientifically measure and understand the power of art in marketing?
I think a lot of people have tried. I don't think it's 100% possible. I think just studying how memories are made and how they decay and what stands out and what doesn't, It's really difficult, and the best we can do is get guidelines from the content that we see really work and try and apply that. But there'll never be an exact kind of a way to uncover that. My favorite brand that is trying to do this, and I think is producing really good research in this area, is System 1. So System 1 is an ad testing platform, literally System and then 1. Check out the research page of their website. There's a lot of really, really interesting pieces that they have. And a lot of it is around understanding, like, you create a piece of content, what exactly makes it perform? Like, is there an artistic side to it? And the findings are pretty amazing. So check out System 1 for a bit more detail on that. I don't know if we'll ever get to 100%.
Here's one, and I can't quite see the name because I think you touched something on your iPad which made mine redundant.
Sorry.
If leadership demands, oh, hang on, here we go. Jamie, it's from Jamie. If leadership demands instant return on investment, how do you defend a long-term brand strategy without losing their buy-in?
Yeah.
So probably a problem many people face.
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think the short answer is you have to do both. Like, you can't just be like, hey, we're not focusing on short term anymore, long term is more important. Business just doesn't work like that. And I think, especially for scale-ups, you earn the right to focus on brand and out-of-market and creativity once you have a healthy pipeline in place. And so it is tricky because you also don't want to get to a place where leadership thinks that your budget is just for short-term results. But the kind of short answer there is you have to do both. Right, and what I've talked about today is a lot around the content that drives results for the long-term brand stuff. In a perfect marketing strategy, you have this running, and you have content that mops up the demand and fills your pipeline at the same time. So you have to get both in place. You have to earn the right by having a healthy pipeline, and then you need to get leadership bought into the long term. Because if you start focusing on more creative brand content, you won't see the results in the coming weeks and months. Sometimes it can take years, right? And leadership have to be bought into that, and it is difficult, right, in a short-term business cycle that we often see today to get people bought in over the long term. So no easy answers there, but you earn the right through a great pipeline.
All right, Robin, you might want to sit down for this one, but the hard questions are coming in. Gunnar, when reach is so important, why does LinkedIn make it hard to have content reach people compared to 2024 back to 2021?
So, I mean, I don't know how controversial I can be here, but
I'll go for it.
Like, look, ultimately, LinkedIn will show content to people that engage with it. And if your content isn't being shown more, it's because people aren't paying attention to it and engaging with it. And I'm sorry if that's a bitter pill to swallow. I feel the same thing with my personal LinkedIn. Sometimes I put up a post and it gets 400 impressions, and I'm like, what the, I'm sure that last year that would have done much better. The algorithm is always changing. The way LinkedIn surfaces content is always changing. LinkedIn doesn't want to be like other platforms. Like, I talk to the product team a lot, and the mission and the kind of vision there is to surface opportunity, to surface value, and to be a really powerful professional network. And so we do have to adapt our content over time to the way that the platform changes. Hopefully what I've expressed today has given you some pointers as to the kind of content that works. Unfortunately, not every piece of content is going to work really well, and I do think the algorithm, or just the way that LinkedIn works right now, is prioritizing the high quality content. And so that is another reason why quality over quantity is really important.
So you don't even get like a sneaky little push in the back end because you work there?
I've tried my best. I sent a lot of emails.
Somewhat related question from Than. 40% of web traffic is bots according to Cloudflare. We've seen signs of that on LinkedIn. How do you ensure ad results are from humans and not inflated by bots?
Yeah, great question. I don't know if you've noticed on LinkedIn, but if you look at some of the other platforms, not to start naming names, but if you look at some of the other platforms, the amount of disrespectful content, hate content, poor quality content, I think has skyrocketed. LinkedIn prides itself on not having as much of that content. It is so easy to report if someone isn't showing up correctly on LinkedIn, if we think there is something else going on. It is a massive priority for us to keep our platform safe and to have the right kind of content on there. And if you do have concerns about traffic being from bots, again, send me a message and I'm sure I'll be able to direct you from the right person. But it's something that we pride ourselves on is having a safe environment that isn't controlled by bots and that doesn't have a lot of kind of hate speech or anything that borders that.
This may be something that you've answered already based on the fact that you like to, LinkedIn likes to keep themselves to themselves in some way and do well with that. From Kelly, why can't you mix ad formats across LinkedIn campaigns like you can with Meta, video and image?
Yeah, great question. I believe that functionality is coming, and I wish it was here today because it would make it a lot easier if we could just run everything in one place with one objective. So I don't really have an answer except for you're bang on, Kelly, and hopefully that gets sorted out soon. I've spoken to the product team who are releasing it. I can't remember an exact date, but you're right in thinking that that's the way that it should work. And it is a change that we're making to our product.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there any methods you can suggest to grow a LinkedIn company page organically apart from using employees, because the engagement on company posts is always much lower?
Yeah, definitely. We see that if someone posts a piece of content and then a brand posts the same piece of content, typically the human posted content, the employee posted content, whatever you want to call it, gets about twice the engagement. And so it is a really powerful channel. So I would definitely suggest using that. But if the question is how do we grow our company page apart from using humans, I would say you can still use their content, just post it from the company. I would say, use paid wherever possible. It's not possible for everyone, but it does make a huge difference to the amount of traffic that comes to your content and to your page. And then just always aim for creativity with that content. Really analyze what you're putting out there right now and ask yourself, is it doing enough to stand out from the noise on LinkedIn, and is it doing enough to stand out from everyone else? So it's prioritizing creativity. Creativity can mean a lot of different things, but as marketers, I think that's a huge part of our job, is understanding how we can take these key messages we have from our brands and express them in as creative a way as possible. So that would be an answer that probably doesn't give you a huge amount of help, right? Like, be creative is very generic, but we should always be aiming to stand out from other brands wherever possible. Using people is an easy way to do that, I think, but then building on that, I would say, how can you creatively express your message, and then how can you do that in a way that adds value to members?
This might give you a laugh.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm just the messenger. Kelly, another Kelly, maybe, or the same one. Should we connect with Claire on LinkedIn, or you, who is better? Wink emoji.
Oh, is that the QR code is old?
I don't know. Should we connect with Claire on LinkedIn, or you, who's better, with a think and a wink?
Kelly, do you want to explain yourself?
Get up here, Kelly.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'll swap that one out. The correct answer is connect with me.
So I'm assuming everyone else that upvoted that also did the same thing. I'm just going to guess.
But this one is working?
Yeah.
Okay, great, yeah. Look, Claire is amazing as well, so if you want, you can connect with her as well. But if you were gun to my head, who should you connect with?
Now, you mentioned before AI has been a big trend today. We did a big panel on it before. Yeah. How is LinkedIn using AI to enhance building a brand in ways you've described?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's a few different ways we're thinking about AI. One of them is just making it easier to set up a campaign. Has anyone set up a campaign on LinkedIn and thought, why is this so complicated? Yeah, a few nods, yeah. It's insane, right? So that's a big way. Like, we don't think you need to be an absolute expert in the tools to see success. And so we have a product called Accelerate. Accelerate is basically AI applied to campaign setup. So you can use natural language to describe what you want, and the campaign will be built from there. You can tweak, and then you can launch. So that is a feature that's available today. AI is kind of everywhere on the platform. It's used in our job recommendations to how our feed works. So it's kind of all-inclusive at the moment. And I think what you will see in future is AI applied more to an understanding of your content, right? So AI that can surface better insights, give you better tips, as if you had someone like me, applying this research and reading through your content and through your advertising results. So baseline is we've been doing it for a while, and the latest product has been Accelerate, where you can much more easily create campaigns now and see better results, and longer term you're going to see it surface more often, especially when it comes to understanding your content. One thing I will say is dwell time, right? I mentioned dwell time and how important that was. Since this research was launched, the product team have actually put it into Campaign Manager. So you can now take a look at your ads and have a look at which ads are getting the most dwell time or capturing the most attention. So that's a cool product enhancement to think about based on this research as well.
That's great. How do you suggest to use LinkedIn to reach new audiences? As B2C, we have basically no budget, 2 employees, and we're on organic posting.
Yeah, it's tricky.
So it's tough.
I think the first thing to do is establish consistency. So it's the most important thing, right? And it's kind of like, if you could imagine like training for a race or getting fit in general, right? You could have the best diet, you could have the best exercises, you could have the best whatever, but if you don't do it consistently, you're never going to be successful. And we see that with building a brand as well. So we have to have the consistency in place. A tip for your own profile is if you are posting less than once per week, you're going to really struggle. And you don't see massive results from posting more than once per day. So very rough rule of thumb here is you should be posting between 1 and 5 times per week. You can apply that to a company page, but we actually find that as you start to build your following, you should be posting more. So you should be aiming for potentially 1 per day once you get to a big enough space. But at the start, I would say consistency should look like 2 or 3 posts per week. In terms of the content, I guess the other thing to do is to establish your baseline of followers. So that means the basic stuff, things like including the links in the right places in your newsletters, on your other channels, in your email signatures, getting your employees to make sure that they're connected to the page, running those programs at your company, getting them to speak, getting your leaders to speak on LinkedIn. We see outsized engagement from more senior people on LinkedIn, right? And so your leaders should be involved in this and leading the way. And if you get those things in place, you'll start to see it climb. And at that point, I would then focus on creating the most valuable content possible in the most entertaining way. So you're right, it's not an easy thing. To start from zero with a company page is hard, but it's about establishing consistency, getting your baseline followers in there of your employees, getting your leaders talking, and just using the link as much as possible and driving traffic to it, and then focusing on content beyond that.
Let's talk about everyone's favorite thing, social media policies. How does LinkedIn help prevent false information from spreading? Because right now, anyone can publish news. They're often clickbaits, inaccurate. What's your sort of policies around that?
Yeah, so the most important thing is that any piece of content that you see, you can immediately report and have someone review. And so that's always been the most effective channel in order to make sure that kind of content is well placed on LinkedIn or suited for the platform. So that's key. That's the baseline, is making sure that you can report any piece of content that you see. There is pretty heavy content moderation in place. I know a lot of other platforms have abandoned that to some extent or reduced it. LinkedIn hasn't taken those steps. So we have a very stringent policy on content moderation and reviewing content. If you want to hear more about that, send me a message and I'll find you the right links to review. But it is core to how our platform works, and it's definitely something that we take very seriously, especially when it's reported.
I've got to say, you've done an excellent job today of not naming any other platforms. You've really nailed that.
It's tough. I think people know, though. I think I think we know what we're talking about.
Sure do. How often should we update our creative to avoid fatigue? Is it something we should rely on our intuition here and our gut feelings?
I love that question, and it's so I'm kind of like, to be honest, I don't fully believe in the concept of creative fatigue. Like if you think about some of the best campaigns ever run, like MasterCard, Priceless, for example, or some of these other big campaigns, they run over a huge amount of time. So it's not message fatigue. I think it's probably more just the need for a refresh of the creative, like not like a complete change of what we're doing. And especially when it comes to branding, I'd love for people to get away from the campaign mindset. Like this is our campaign on AI, and then in a few months' time, we're going to do a campaign on our thought leadership, and a few months later, we're going to do a campaign on this. I think it's more for these brand positioning. It's about getting your position, establishing your message, and then executing on that message in different ways. And I think that's the right mindset to have. I think the best way to do that is make sure you're targeting a large enough group of people. Otherwise, your CTRs will always be going down because it's just never going to work because it doesn't have scale. And then the second piece would be, once you have that mentality and structure in place, monitoring your creative and seeing if there's drastic drops over time, it's time for a refresh. It doesn't mean a completely different message or a rebrand, right? It's more just thinking about refreshing the message, trying a new format, expressing the key thing in a different way.
Cool. And talking about fatigue, you must be done because you've been up here for a long time. So please thank Robin O'Connell from LinkedIn.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
And he will be going through, we'll be giving that 6 months of LinkedIn That was him, not me. 6 months of LinkedIn Premium from Robin for the most upvoted question on Slido. Excellent. And I think we're done for the day.
Have you all had a good day? Have you learnt lots? Brilliant.
Because we're going to do it all again tomorrow.
We sure are.
Doors open at 8:45 tomorrow. I bet you can't wait to get back in here. We're starting at 9:15. We want to thank our partners, InDaily, Refuel Creative, Stack, Woolman's Lawyers, and AADC for helping us put all this on today. And also our organisers, Jen, Ryan, and Rubina. And also our volunteers over there in the back corner who have been helping out all day. Can we give a round of applause to those guys? They put a lot of effort into making today happen.
Just lastly, thank you to each and every one of you who brought your energy, your questions, your ability to listen and reinvent what you're doing at work. It's incredible because the marketing game many, many years ago looks very different today. So whether you've come in with a fresh mindset or whether you're looking to learn some new patterns from old ways of thinking, well done to each and every one of us because together we're stronger. So thank you. See you tomorrow.